Well, good evening, folks. It is Thursday, June 5th at 6:01 p.m. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'll note that the whole commission is present, and we'll go forward the full committee. You should have received a copy of the agenda and the mentioned previous meeting via email. Without any addition or objection, we'll go ahead and accept those. Hearing none, the minutes and the agenda are accepted. I think that we should probably talk a little bit about the transition plan, specifically the statutory and charter government differences and resources to help navigate that. I did call the Ohio Municipal League today. The guidebook they publish, the city has a copy. Municipal League has approved us copying that and making copies. So I don't think that we were able to get that done for this meeting because Taylor is out of office until Monday. But as soon as we do have copies of those, I would be happy to come and deliver them to folks so we can go and get to work on that. And we can meet next week potentially and go ahead and start assigning and talking about how we want to break up that division of labor, because I think that it's important that we start getting moving on that pretty quickly. So
that's good here. I emailed them. They had still been working on things.
I talked to them about 11 o'clock this morning. City has most up-to-date copy of it, and we've been approved too.
Monday's usually his day off, though, too, so I don't know how that all.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a text into him, and his office is tracking it. So next week I'll work on getting that and get copies to you all. So as far as that goes, I mean, I've been looking at Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 715. That's the general powers of municipal governments. And I've been finding quite a bit of things that be a resolution or ordinance that are probably gonna have to be adopted in the next statutory government. I do, and Mr. Rowe, this might be a question for you. What's the best way for us to get copies of the city's resolutions and ordinances? I mean, I know that it's on American Legal Publishing, whatever that is, and I've looked at it, but that's not always the most functional for.
It's a very clunky. It's hard to search. There is one physical printed copy in the city manager's office as well.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we could maybe get a PDF and just like get it to Minuteman or something and have them rip off 5 or 6 copies of it, or 7 or 8.
We might be able to just take the physical copy to them and have them run. That will have most of the legislation, not all of it, but
yeah, the stuff that's not codified yet is still floating.
right. And it should. The purpose of the code, the codification, is to have anything that's of permanent nature. So it won't have the annual appropriations. That's just for
It's a resolution. Yeah.
right. It will have some include my recollections. It does include some resolutions, but not very many resolutions. So, but that should be 90-95% of the law that would be updated. One thing that I will just flag for you, and it's just an artifact of the way American legal publishing does things, because they do this for a lot of municipalities around the state. They take sections of the Ohio Revised Code that would apply to a statutory.
And just say C. Or
well, they'll copy and paste it in the code. So ironically, there's stuff in Nelsonville code that does not apply to Nelsonville because of the charter, but would apply to it as a statutory city. And that's just because whoever at American Legal just, and I don't mean this disrespectful, but
No,
it's easier for them to copy and paste and use the same template for the other
It's
town.
probably not a very large account for them, that's what you're saying.
Right. And so ironically, funnily enough, there will be some things that won't need to be changed because they're already baked in. Like for example, electing the council president by the people. Well, under the charter, that's not true, but under this, so, anyway, for the 90 to 95% of the city law that's in the code, it would just be a simple readopting in January that code, and then whatever's in it is now adopted by the council. There would, obviously, the big change would have to be going through, and every time it says city manager, changing that. Because it wouldn't be the city manager. There would be things like that, so that it still would need someone to go through what the 2000. Yes.
Could you just make a general resolution that, you know, the city manager will now be known as whatever, and you wouldn't have to go through every single.
I mean, someone still physically need to go through it. It just as a legislative fix, that might be the trick. But someone would still need it. The typist would still need it.
My thought is more for doing that. Are there places where our codes are and our ordinances are in conflict with the ORC? I think that's more my goal. Is want to make sure the two are in harmony.
Right. With respect to government structure, that would be really important for substantive stuff like offenses, like speeding.
Yeah,
that stuff probably would need less attention because
the vice coach says the city may regulate
right
speed vehicles.
Right. And so ironically, the nitty gritty stuff may need less nitty gritty attention. It's the high level stuff that would actually need nitty gritty attention. If that makes sense. And again, it would still require the last 2 years worth of ordinances go through those, because those haven't been codified yet. And frankly, my advice to the city would be, I think they're getting set for the next recodification soon. I would hold off on that until January, frankly, because if you do it between now and January, we're going to have to do it again in January.
And what are what is the hazard with waiting to do that until we have the statutory government, if there is conflict with ORC or if there's something? I mean, it's the city has operated without the last 2 years of ordinances and legislation, right? So I mean, it can't be terrible. It has to be done at some point if there's a
I don't
hazard.
think there's any additional hazard other than what we've already talked about with the risk of the transition would have to be done on the fly, and like you've alluded to. Frankly, the new council's probably going to 1201. And I think with the recodification, that's even something that could be prepared now and just say, hey, here's the ordinance adopting this codification with, as Ms. LaRue hinted at, these general changes throughout.
Yeah.
That's probably the easiest fix. There's risk there because you ideally want all of the legislation to be as specific as possible. You don't want to leave it to the discretion of the typist to make a decision about what goes where, because they're not the council, they're just supposed to follow the instructions. So you want it to be as specific as possible so that they don't have to make an assumption. More, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna, when we're looking at the different types of ordinances, is there any like section or specific type that might be more likely to be in conflict because of the home rule issue, where we've adopted things that are more specific to the local needs rather than, because I know at one time, years ago when I was on council, we always tried to do things based on the former city attorney. You don't want to be in conflict with the law, so you want to try to keep everything. So I really don't know that, we're talking going 30 years back, how many things could really be in conflict?
Well, remember, fortunately for us, the rule for how to interpret a charter in the court cases is the courts are supposed to read the charter as close as possible to what the revised code already says, unless it says something that's directly opposite. Let me just use an example that's kind of already we've talked about a little bit, the wards issue. So under the statutory system, you have wards. Under the Nelsonville Charter, all 7 members of council are elected at large. That's the opposite of wards. So you don't have, the charter doesn't have to say there are no wards. All it has to say is council's at large. That's in conflict with the revised code. So you go with the specific language of the charter. But in other areas where the charter is silent or is a little vague, the courts say, well, let's look at what the statute says, the revised code. Let's look at what court cases have said about the revised code, because there are way more court cases interpreting the revised code than there are Nelsonville Charter. And so, let's harmonize as much as possible. That helps us in the sense that with the transition, it's just, okay, we're giving up the specifics of the charter, anything that's kind of general or vague in the charter, we'd already be defaulting to the council, the revised code rules. A real world example, again, one that we've dealt with in the last year, how do you feel vacancies on council? There's nothing in Nelsonville Charter that says that specifically, but there is a section of the revised code that specifically relates to that. And it says you fill it by motion, and that motion passes by a majority vote of those present at the meeting. So if someone's absent, it doesn't matter. And it makes sense because the reason that the revised code says that is you don't want someone to play games by preventing someone from being appointed by, let's say, 2 people just being absent and never coming to a meeting and preventing you from filling the seats. The revised code wants the vacancies filled as quickly as possible. So that's an example actually where the switch in statutory government makes no difference. It's exactly the same rule. And so that harmonization factor will finally be a help to us. I think the easiest thing to do, going back to your original question, is, or maybe this was Ms. LaRue's point, just having that very basic, let's adopt the code of ordinance just so we have it, and then understand that in the early months, there's going to have to be a lot of work by that new county. You just want to have something on the books. You need to have something on the books. That's faster. Then they can go back and just go through each section of that code.
So you don't think it would be our job to do that? You think that should be reserved for the new council to draft that and do that like work of identifying those?
Well, my fear is that if it's going to be a tough fall for the new council.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is more practical. If it's not flagged for them, will they have the energy to identify that? And I don't mean that disrespectfully.
No, it's just that they're going to be drinking from the fire hose.
They're going to be drinking from 2 fire hoses.
Yeah.
And as much help as can be done. For sure, this commission should identify structural issues. And I think I've been doing that very well. Again, another example of that would be just reauthorizing and reestablishing the fire and police departments. That's a major significant structural government structure issue. For, does this commission need to go through and go through the ordinances establishing the prohibition on speeding? Probably not, although the problem there is under the charter, who's ultimately responsible for enforcing speeding laws is the city manager. Obviously, that won't be the case under the statutory form of government.
Supervision.
Right,
Yeah.
fortunately, he delegates all of that to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
police
Yeah,
department.
the language still.
Still, yeah.
Right, but that's how Nelsonville law is
Yeah,
structured.
so if someone gets speeding ticket, they can say, oh, well, Nelsonville doesn't have a city manager, this speeding ticket doesn't exist because the
Well,
police department can't enforce it.
And that's exactly the concern with that example, is if that change isn't made, and again, that's a nitty gritty issue, if that change isn't made, we know people love getting out of speeding tickets for whatever reason. I've had people fight because they said, oh, well, the speed limit sign was too far away for me to see it. And it was rainy that day. Well, that doesn't matter. That makes no difference. But people come up with any excuse to get out of a speeding ticket. And even if they don't have a lawyer, the people do not like speeding tickets. They don't like taxes and they don't like speeding tickets. And they'll come up with any argument for that. So like that's a nitty gritty problem that has real world consequences potentially. So like, I'm not trying to.
Best practice would probably be to look at it if we have the ability to do it and we have the time, I think it's something we should definitely do for incoming.
I think that we likely will have time if we want to take it on. I'd be interested in other people's thoughts on that.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because there are all of these kind of like minuscule kind of ordinances out there addressing things like trash cans and grass height of before you get fined for cutting and, and curb cuts and, all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, got 5,000 people.
Right, yeah.
I think it's definitely setting them up to succeed if they're going back to if they take the hard copy of the minute and press or some establishment takes the copy, are they able to also scan that to get a PDF? I think that would be just to have the PDF on file for the city at least.
I can work on that if you want me to. I mean, Minuteman's right across the street from my office, so if that helps. I mean, I'm willing to.
I think that's a good idea. Number one, just for the city to be able to say, oh yeah, here's a PDF in-house of our ordinances as of, 2 years ago, or most, you said so much recent.
If I may, so I'm just looking at the online, version. What I would definitely focus on in the code is Title 1, which is general provisions, and especially Chapter 10, general provisions. That has, I'll just warn you, that has the most legal mumbo jumbo in the whole code. Sorry, that's a technical term.
Very professional.
Detailed, legal wording. It's important. It's basically the boilerplate of the code. We've all seen contracts with boilerplate language. So it's all boilerplate. It's important because, like, for example, chapter 10.11 is ordinances unaffected. And puts in a rule and then a rule on how to interpret the code or amend the code, things like that. So it can get pretty boring. Well, I think it's the most exciting part of the code, to be honest with you, but I know reasonable minds may
We
disagree.
wonder about you somehow.
My wife does too. The other one would be Title 3, which is administration. That would be the high level structure issues. Titles 5 through 15, and they're all odd numbered. I'm just so you know. 5 through 15 are just various regulations. There is in the code itself also a section for special ordinances. That probably doesn't need any of our attention because that would be like street names, things like that.
Mr. Clement has said though that there have been street namings that have not been codified too. So I was just worried about how that might cause problems. I mean, I don't know how 911 is administered, but if there is something like that, access to service and that kind of thing. It might not have any bearing on it.
It could because, I mean,
but it could also be a legal thing that a disturbance occurred at this address. Well, that address doesn't exist because the street name's been changed, right?
well, I mean, people have made crazy arguments to get out of the citation.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yes.
How does this open us up for more lawsuits?
It increases the risk. I mean, but let me put it this way, what lawyers do day to day is try to reduce risk. You can never eliminate risk of litigation. You try to reduce risk. One way lawyers do it is by wording things, knowing, okay, if I word it this way, it will cost X number of dollars to fight it. If I word it this other way, it'll cost 10 times more. I've written things actually where I know, okay, I'm going to say this, it'll cost my client now $200 extra, but it'll force the other side, if they were to get sued, to spend $10,000 fighting this one issue that I know they're going to win. The other side's going to win it, but the way I'm wording it is making my client avoid additional costs down the road. If you take it to an extreme, that's why lawyers have a bad rap, because if you don't do it rightly, you're just playing games.
pedantic.
Yeah,
Right.
If we don't address it, it would open up new government to more.
I agree,
Right.
I agree, and I can see it being a problem.
Well, just taking Mr. Courtney's example, let's suppose somebody gets issued a citation, say, well, that's not the real street name. They'll fight that, and all of a sudden the city has to pay several $1,000s fighting that issue, when you could have just avoided that by just getting it fixed to begin with. Even though the court is not going to toss someone's for a speeding ticket because there's an address that's the true address, but it's just, the ordinances aren't in perfect order, it's highly unlikely the court will kick it out for that reason alone. But it'll still cost extra money to get that all fixed, and of course, then it's, the city technically does have a little bit of a shiner in the left eye, and you'd rather avoid that if you can. So I guess, Mr. Long-winded answer, I think it increases, the more issues that could be litigated will get litigated, I think. And that just necessarily comes with more cost. Which is, one reason why I think, and I just really appreciate this with this commission, is like its willingness to identify, ask hard questions, because it's better to ask them now than in 9, 10 months.
Why am I getting this summons?
Right. Right. It's actually been just going back to the codification, it's been something that's been on my back burner for a long time. I actually have a document that I've been working through, with actually going through each section of the code. I keep pushing it back to the back burner with other things coming up, but I'd actually started working on it to try to actually get it all synced up. Of course, that was before the issue. I started that before the issue 23 vote, and then I'm like, well, it doesn't make any sense to delete the revised code sections anymore, because that's actually going to be the rule. But the Nelsonville code, and maybe this is the perfect opportunity, does need someone to go through it from beginning to end. At some point, it needs to go through, because there's a lot that's just, it's internal. My biggest concern right now is it's not internally consistent. That's the biggest problem.
Is there any risk of us as non-lawyers making a recommendation to change something in that and causing more of a headache down the line, or would it?
I don't think so. I mean, look, if you make a recommendation, well, technically council could just
Yeah, you just shelf it.
shelf it. I think this commission, if it believes the recommendation is appropriate, should just make the recommendation, see where it goes. There's no harm in making a recommendation. Because, I mean, even if you make a wrong recommendation, you're probably flagging something that needs to be looked at anyway. And if it needs to be looked at, it needs to be looked at.
Are there law firms that cities hire to go through the city code and update them? There are folks out there, this is what they do. They will.
Well, Ironically, American Legal probably hires a few lawyers on their staff. I'm gonna guess because our account with them is probably not that big, they probably just have or a regular staff. They call lawyers irregular. Just regular staff do it. The bigger cities, they're going to have lawyers, like Columbus. I'm going to guess American Legal does Columbus's code. I mean, I might be wrong about that, but I'm going to guess American Legal actually has some of their on-staff attorneys work because Columbus is so big and they've been spending a ton of money on something like that. So there are. I've also engaged in other areas with other firms on a case-by-case basis to review specific portions of a village's law. So I've never had anyone do like a comprehensive view. First off, if you hired a law firm, it would be a specialized one. Columbus would just have very high rates. I mean, you would get quality work. It would just cost money. I know as the village of Albany has codified all of this, but that they relied on a couple of people on council who were retired, volunteering all of their time to go through 50 years worth of.
We have their numbers.
It took them a long time though, didn't it?
Yes, it took a decade.
Yeah.
And of course what helped them so much is, I mean, they have people on village government who've been there for 15, 20 years.
Yeah, a lot of consistency.
Yes. And again, also people who are retired with enough time, over 10, 15 years, 10 to 15 years to do that. And you know, I think it serves their purpose without breaking the bank. You could hire, maybe the best thing to do would be, hey, American Legal coming buy a little bit more of a souped up service for the next recodification, just to really look at things. Maybe that's the best one.
We can dive into it, anything.
Well, that's
way out of our
that's
control, push over to them and then cut the cost.
that was my idea, is that we have the list of things that are clear that we can do, things that you need to have a legal expert parse through.
Basically, they can become fact checkers for us.
Yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else on that topic for now, we can talk about action that needs to be taken to address that a bit here, but I put December problem on there just because that's my thing to do, I guess. When I was talking to council last week, something was brought up about the issue of the midnight council meeting or the 12:01 council meeting on January 1st of, would they be able to actually adopt any legislation at that meeting, because they wouldn't be able to give notice because they wouldn't be a body. I just want to explore it, like there wouldn't be a seated body at that point. It would have to be an organizational meeting. Do you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Rowe? I just want to be sure that that's one of the things that we're not going to run into. We have this whole plan, and it's like, oh, actually, no, legally we can't meet because we've not been able to announce a meeting.
So here's my current thinking, and again, forgive me, there's maybe a wide uncertainty in the answer, but here's where I've landed for now. On number one, I think the council in December should make sure that the public information officer just announces a January 1st meeting of the Nelsonville City Council. And if that's done December 30th, 31st, at least 24 hours in advance, that's sufficient. I think they should then just conduct, because of the unique, almost frankly, emergency situation that they'll be facing. I think the likely result from a court will not be a strict constructionism.
A judge would give you some leeway on that.
A judge is going to recognize the unique situation. You're establishing it's basically like settlers first coming here and establishing their first government for Nelsonville. Even though Nelsonville's already here, it's kind of like we're redoing the very first settling of Nelsonville. Granted, the revised code did not exist in its current form.
Yeah.
But I think a court is going to recognize and look at it much more practically than strictly. And with that practical consideration, the very first question is, okay, what practically needs to be done to ensure the smooth transition of government? That's going to be the first question. Under that question, I think the court's going to be deferential to the council. Worst case, if I'm right, worst case, the court would just admonish the council saying, hey, there was this technical Open Meetings Act issue. Don't do it again, but I'm not going to disturb this because it's just more important to actually have a government than to upset everything you did. You have to go back, and that's just going to guarantee more uncertainty and possibly weeks of technically no government. I don't think a court's going to go there. Okay. So, you know, again, is that there's a risk, but I think that's the best answer.
Okay. And on December problem, one other thing I want to bring up is any further communication you've had with the Board of Elections.
Yes, they sent me an email asking me, okay, what needs to be on the November ballot? I'm still in the process of putting that letter together to send to them. I'll copy the commission numbers on it. It's taken me a few extra days to get through it, and it's been helpful because I finally had a crystallized point. The law requires the charter council seats to be on the November ballot because the charter's not dead yet. It's still
been my
alive.
impression too.
Yes, and so those seats have to be on the ballot. If anyone submits a petition by the deadline in the first week of August, the Board of Elections has to take those, accept them, and put them on the November ballot, even though it's only for a 1 month term. Because that's what Nelsonville law requires. That's why there have to be 2 sets of ballots on the November issue. And I'm just gonna put it that clearly. It finally kind of just kind of crystallized for me why that has to be. Now, is it true if nobody runs, will the 1 member on council on December 1st be able to appoint a second one? Yes, that's plan B. But plan A in our system of government always is the people get to, that's why we have elections. So that's plan A. That has to be plan A. That's what the law requires plan A to be. But it always has built in the plan B of, well, what if there are vacancies because nobody ran? I mean, that's one reason why you can have a vacancy is nobody ran. And in that situation, then, again, and I want to be clear, that 1 person does not, I don't think, have authority to appoint unilaterally all other 6. It's sequential. It's that 1 person appoints second.
Second, phase 3,
Yes.
3, 4.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens if that one person resigns and chooses not to do that?
And there's nothing else. That's the worst case December problem.
And it could be.
And it very well could be. I mean, I cannot, as city attorney, that's a personal choice of
Well, yeah.
anyone.
But they could appoint someone and then resign, so that's also an option.
Well, I mean, another thing to just keep in mind is with all the, you know, issues around how do we appropriately resign from council, if there needs to be an acceptance, that person would then
No one is,
may feel that person needs to resign in November before everyone else is off, which,
that's,
you know, again, whatever anyone's personal choice in that situation, I would respect it. That's a very intense personal choice. It's just, there's a lot contingent on, I mean, that's one reason why you never want to be in a situation where it's just one person. That council's not designed to be a one pony show. It's not.
and we have legislative bodies, not legislative individuals.
Right, exactly.
Well, I think that then, you know, really it lays it out for the community to think about. If you want to do your community service, put your name into that 1 month seat so that they can be.
The advantage is, as know all of you appreciate public services. Sometimes very challenging. I guess you do your 1 month time and be done for the rest of your life, right? Don't have to worry about. But the other thing parallels this just as a practical reason. I was just going to ask council to make sure the word gets spread around town about this, because we don't want, the city does not want a situation where only a select few are aware. Because it's open to anybody. They're free, open, and fair elections.
So is that something that the city could put out a public notice of?
I
A lot of times, not just once.
sure.
Yeah, once every 2 weeks or something.
I think that should start, yes, soon. The deadline's gonna be here before you know it.
I can make sure all that council on that. I'm sure you reinforce that. Mr. Holmes is here and he's aware of that as well, so. Anything else on the December problem, or does either you or Mr. Holmes, do you have anything else you'd like to share? Excellent. We'll go ahead and move on from city manager and law director updates, commissioner updates and discussion. I was not able to attend the League of Women Voters Wards Map meeting last week. But I believe Ms. Lori, you did. Either of you have anything you'd like to share about that? Any updates from the outcome of that meeting?
There's not really a total update yet because it was an explaining again. And then there's another meeting, the 16th. And the people that were there, and you can speak for that too, because you were there, kind of had an idea already what was happening. And what we really want is the people that need to understand it more fully, learn about it. I don't know how to do that. You can,
Civic participation is a choice.
yes, it is.
Where is the next meeting? Is that at the library?
Library,
Okay.
yes,
June 16th,
yes.
what time?
I think 6,
I would say 6.
7.
Yeah,
I can call.
Yeah,
Mark.
I don't remember which of the 2 times it is.
since I was in there, how many people did attend?
Same amount as last time, except more of the people who were present were from the League of Women Voters and the media. There were relatively fewer actual Nelsonville residents. Sorry.
I'm not sure if they came to the first one, they felt they needed to come to the second one. If they were at the second one, they may not feel they need to come to the third one. But somebody does. And we thought, well, I'll just get this out right now. And I wish you'd all take 2 of these to pass around. I got these from Linda. They've all been paid for by the League of Women Voters. Take a couple of these and pass them out to people. If we only get 10 new people there, it would be a miracle. And other people are going around and putting things in businesses. And just because you get 1 or 2, pass them to everybody. Maybe somebody will have an idea that it's a good thing to come to.
Yeah, just pass this whole stack around.
You can't leave unless you take 5.
It's from 6 to 8.
You're getting
At the library.
That's so
And there was a mistake on there, so they changed the month, but it makes it more obvious that way, I thought.
Monday.
Well, thank you both for attending and keeping track of that. I'll be sure to let council know that as well on Monday. With nothing else on that point, I think we already did enough discussing on the transition plan. I think that was covered under the law director updates. Everybody's okay with that? We'll go ahead and move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight?
I have a question.
Sure.
So it's sounding more and more and more like the city is going to need to have legal counsel come 2026. And I don't know if this is the right place to ask this question, but it deals with the transition. What, I know we've talked about this or you guys have talked about it in the past. Have any clear avenues for obtaining a city, like contracting a city law director, come to light?
So we, obviously the question of a eligible citizen, in the city of Nelsonville to be elected law director, there's still a lot of uncertainty there. I think I've said before, I can only think of one person who's an active member of the bar here that lives in Nelsonville. I don't think they would be interested in taking that job on. But we have recommended to council to seek a special counsel sort of arrangement on a 3 to 4 month time frame from November to February-ish to assist with the transition and also serve as legal counsel once Mr. Rhodes' contract expires.
Okay. I might ask follow-up questions about that on Monday.
Yeah, I think that would be a question for council.
Yeah.
Not necessarily us.
Yeah.
So sorry to punt it, but
Oh.
I think that's the best answer I can give.
Yeah.
Can council make a new rule? That it doesn't have to be someone that's.
No, that's revised code says.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
Yeah.
There's gotta be a way out of that.
There's something in there, correct me if I'm wrong, that allows me to hire.
Yeah, it allows you to hire outside the city, but it's only if,
It's an acting position, which means as soon as someone gets eligible to run for it.
But as soon as they're eligible, that doesn't mean they want to.
Right, I know. You can't force anybody to serve as, the city legal counsel. An appointment can be made, I don't want to belabor possible future conflict issues, between council and the mayor, but I'm just part of the problem. So the mayor gets to make the appointment of the temporary acting law director. But what if it's somebody that council doesn't trust? And again, I hope, I'm not saying this because I want it to happen. I genuinely do not want this to happen. But if council doesn't want them to do it, the council might put up all sorts of hurdles to prevent the law director that's being appointed by the mayor, and you just wind up creating a huge sticking point over that versus, hey, if it's the elected law director, it doesn't matter whether the mayor likes him or not, doesn't matter whether council likes him or not. That person's elected to be law director, they're law director for 4 years. So again, I'm not wanting that. I'm just pointing out again that temporary acting appointment is not plan A. It's really more plan B or C. Plan A really needs to be, how can Nelsonville attract someone who can then be accountable directly to the people and be elected by the people to serve as law director? That's what the statute contemplates, although it recognizes, hey, small towns may not have that.
and I just, 1967 Attorney General Opinion number 67-115. A municipal corporation is given authority to make contracts on property to incur liabilities. And surely this must include the authority to employ legal counsel and conduct and defend suits in which the city has an interest. In absence of an express or implied restriction, a city has the authority to employ legal counsel whenever and wherever it is necessary to be represented for the preservation and protection of its interests. So we have a.
Print that out. No, I'm very serious.
What section was that?
So that is a Attorney General
Oh, right.
opinion, 1967 Attorney General Opinion number 67-115.
Thank you.
So not law, but an interpretation of the law that is helpful for us.
Very good.
Any other comments from the public?
With the Attorney General of Ohio.
Yes. Well, with no further public comment, we'll go ahead and conclude that portion of the agenda. Action to be taken in setting next meeting. So as far as action to be taken, we need to get a hold of the municipal government in Ohio guidebook that the municipal league puts out. I believe that we have a pathway to do that. Both Mr. Robe and I will be in contact with Mr. Sappington once he's available again to get that moving. Like I said, I'll get all of you a physical copy of that as soon as I can. Hopefully early next week or late next week at the latest. I think that we ought to all take a little bit of time to review that and then meet maybe earlier than our typical 2 weeks from now, if we can. So my idea would maybe on Tuesday next week, but like as an if needed meeting on the books. And if we can't do that, then
We won't have a law book by then.
well, I'm hoping that we might be able to. Because I think Taylor's back in office Monday. We could do Thursday next week too, if we would want to.
Well, if he gets it on Monday, and
But he should have it, it's just getting the copies made of it.
I'm out of town all next week, so
Okay,
vacation.
it's gonna take more than half a day to read that. I think. I
Yeah.
don't know how big it is.
but it's significant, but I'm not saying we're gonna read the whole thing and sit down and figure it out.
Maybe the ones you talked about here.
Yeah, there'd be the opportunity for us to
Okay.
be able to thumb through it and say, all right, Lori, you're gonna look at this, Joe, you're gonna look at this, Terry, you're gonna look at this.
And we're gonna get a PDF.
Yeah.
too.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay. I think Tuesday's too early.
Okay, I'm unavailable Wednesday, but Thursday, we wanna go ahead and meet again next Thursday, 6 P.M.
That should work.
So we will do that, let's call that, as needed, if needed, in case something happens and we don't have the resources by then. I don't want to waste anybody's time by getting together.
That would be
So,
acceptable.
we'll make a determination of if we need that meeting or not, hopefully early on next week. Let's go ahead and set our next regular meeting to that, at this point. I will note that 2 Thursdays from now is the 19th, that is Juneteenth and federal holiday. Would everyone be okay meeting that Wednesday, at 6:30, Wednesday the 18th at 6:30?
For right now.
I would not be.
Okay.
You can put us on speaker.
Yes.
Is there a day that week that works better for you?
The day prior, I can't, Tuesday, I'm open.
Okay, Tuesday 17th, 6 or 6:30, let's do 6, then for some reason I'd already put it on my calendar as 6:30 for Wednesday. So, for the record, we have an if needed meeting on Thursday, June 12th at 6 p.m. And our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, June 17th at 6 p.m. I think other action to be taken, we would need, so we have the OML guidebook covered. We're gonna need a copy and a PDF of the city book of ordinances. I'll work with Mr. Holmes to get the ball rolling on getting that. And I feel like I'm missing something. Am I missing something? Other than those 2 things for what we need for our next meetings. Okay. And then
Well,
there's,
we're getting close to the August thing. We want to do some things by July, so that might, we have to really address that on that meeting, and if we do it on the 17th, whatever that Tuesday is. 17th. That's June, July.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get the ball rolling on getting the review done next week. As far as, as report to council, reiterating the need for the legal counsel, for the transition, and I'm missing something, that's what I'm missing something on. We discussed something else there that I need to report to council on Monday.
Was it announcing about, the city announcing about
That is
collecting
it.
signatures for December?
That is it, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other business before the committee? Hearing none, we will adjourn without objection. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.